Hello, who is Power here with the review of the Kamen Rider Saber DX Seiken SworDriver. Obviously, this is the main driver for the year, as here we have Saber himself and the two components that make this entire thing. So here we have the Kamen Rider, and here we have the SworDriver itself. Obviously pictured here, we have the Brave Dragon Wonder Ride book, which is our gimmicks for this year. Saber, Brave Dragon on the left. Him again on the right. This is the left, this is the right. Here he is at the bottom. And a bunch of stuff that you can do with it on the back. And the top not really showing much besides the fact you pull out the sword. Other than that, let's get deep into this. So here we have the content out of the box. We're just going to deal with the SworDriver itself. I guess move aside the belt straps too. So here's the SworDriver itself, which a first for me is a hunk of plastic, because spoilers, this is not going to contain any of the sounds. It just has a chrome front plate for simplicity's sake, and again, just a hollow piece of plastic with a bunch of mechanisms built into it. And I think part of it broke, if I had to be honest, because it should not. This should have been sticking out. As you can just see, a huge hole for the Seiken itself. This is where you're going to slot your Wonder Ride books. And as you can see here, there's some text embedded within the SworDriver, to which this is the Wonder language, I believe it's called. I'm not too familiar with the show, so I'm just going to go off whatever the font calls it. But essentially, with Saber, they made their own language, which is essentially English, the English alphabet, but stylized differently and turned around. So then, I won't be able to read this. But I know there's other people that have. I don't know how much more at the show this being hollow. There's some holes, and not because of the Seiken in the left and right. And next up, we got the belt straps, which I don't know if I should even bother going super heavy with these, because they're just simply red belt straps. And if you want to know specifically, these are just red repaints of the Gamer Driver straps, which honestly at this point is just lazy and hysterical. There's the left, the right. I'm pretty sure the strap, like, essentially we did reuse X8 straps in Geo, but in Geo they at least took in the effort of changing the clip, but here it doesn't seem like they did. And speaking of Geo, we're back to having the back piece of the Gamer Driver, which this is a piece I like. Oddly enough, I think it works. I don't know. I think it's just really weird that with the Rider, it's just like we rarely have like new pieces made. I think the last driver we had completely new stuff made for was the Beyond driver. But anyways, just simply clip the belts as you typically do. there you go. Here's the SworDriver itself. Just without the Seiken loaded, because we will take a look at that next. But well, technically not next, but you know, just for a feel and for completionism's sake, I'll keep it strapped. So here's the Seiken, which is the main item for the toy line, as this thing houses all the electronics and such. So we're finally back to a gimmick where technically we're back to a gimmick where it's not the gimmicks themselves that produce the sounds, it's the device itself, which is a nice change. However, there are drawbacks. I like the basic design of the Seiken. We have this nice detail within the inside, and then you got this wonder mark up here for later. You obviously got an empty slot here. You got the blade, which is pretty like non-existent. This part is like, you can see it's bulky for a blade, and I like the black on the hilt and the trigger. In the back, nothing real much. This requires 3 AAA batteries. The speakers are here, on off switch here. And this is the like thing, or this is the, I don't want to say track, but this is where essentially where you're gonna slot everything this can go into, and as you can see right here. So, well, last but not least, size. It's alright. It's, you know, for a tiny sword, it's decent without an emblem, as we will get to. And obviously, we got a button here for the SworDriver and a suspicious slot there. Other than that, it's a typical DX sword, but it's just nice that it's actually front and center for once. So here's the one of the main items, the Kamen Rider emblem, which is, this is going to be the thing to tell the SworDriver that's in this specific mode. And now the emblems are pretty interesting. They're just translucent pieces of plastic, they're translucent pieces of plastic that are typically molded in one color of plastic, this case being red, and it's pretty solid. And as you can see at the front there, we get a chrome version of the rider symbol for that rider. So this is Saber's rider symbol, which I appreciate this. The back we don't get much. Here we get the wonder mark, and there you can see the NFC chip, because this is an NFC reader. So nothing real much you can do with it. That's really it. Last but not least, here we have the main gimmick of the Saber toy line, the Wonder Ride books, which are just miniature-esque books. So as you can see here, just like Progress keys, they're molded in like 2 respective colors, just inverted essentially. So the secondary color will be always black with these books, but then the main, like the base color, will be the respective color for the book. So in this case, it's just a bright red. And as you can see here, Wonder Ride books do provide sounds. However, there's a catch to that. Here's the Wonder Mark, painted in a nice silver. The pull tab. Here's the cover of Brave Dragon, and whoops, that good thing that didn't spoil anything. As you can see right here, this is more the Wonder text, but this one I can actually read. So this is Brave Dragon and Kamen Rider here, and this is the slot indication. There's Brave Dragon itself. Once we open it, you get introduced to this page, which essentially just kind of has like, I don't know, it's just saying all of these have this, it's something about like opening the cover of the page. And then this is the secondary page, which it says Brave Dragon once again, and it just labels essentially some parts of the dragon. And then here is where they locate the QR code because they didn't want to put it in the back, which I think this is kind of smart. And now, for this case, I used to say Butaba Gamba because, you know, ever since X8, you were able to use the gimmicks within both games. However, like at the start of Saber, I kind of suspected because they weren't updating anything with Butabaso that the game was going to end. And I think it was just last month they actually announced the game ending. Like mid-January, I believe. So, for now on, I just had to say this QR code's for Gamba Rising, so I can't say Butaba Gamba anymore. And, last but not least, the transformation page, which I'll spoil by pressing this button. So, as you can see there, with Saber, and again, it will say, I think this just says Brave Dragon once again. I don't like the fact this is in black. Or it might have said... No, right, that's saying Kamen Rider. This is saying Brave Dragon, but... overall, the art on these are pretty neat. You can say they're very similar to the Gashat covers, but this one they obviously have to do a lot. They have to illustrate a lot more, so... Yeah, so let's finally get to the sounds, to which you're introduced to one by pulling this right away. So there you get the description for the Wonder Ride book. However, when you press this button here, you get a announcement sound. And then when opening the book, you get the same sound as you get from pulling the tab. And those are really the only two sounds you get out of the Wonder Ride book themselves. And essentially, it's going to be complicated because I don't want to talk for too long, but I have to. How Wonder Ride books work is essentially just, you know, they are, like, you can see this tab protruding out. Essentially, this tab presses a button within here. And then, this button is used for multiple things. And so when it's held in, it does different stuff and such. And I also forgot to mention this side detail, which is interesting because this is technically making the Wonder Ride books audio books, which makes a lot of sense. Anyways, that's it. I've talked too much about this, so let's get on. Again, with the Seiken, just simply switch it on like so. So there you get a white LED right away. Now it announces itself as the Seiken SworDriver, but again, the belt portion is the SworDriver. This without an emblem is a Seiken until we take the Kaiken Rekka emblem and scan it up to the Wonder Mark. There, it will actually announce its name and such. And simply plug it in this area like so. From this plug, you won't get a sound, but now you get the complete look of the Kaiken Rekka, which, yeah, technically doesn't add anything, but it adds color to the Seiken, and you know, essentially it blocks off some clearance because of its fire here. So you only get one singular slashing sound from this. So you just press the trigger. Obviously it will go a red LED, and again it's just singular. So not really much, but I really like how the LEDs glow out from this. It's really impressive. And then taking out the SworDriver, you can now slot it in just like so. And now you have the full look of the SworDriver with the Seiken. Obviously, this is what it looks like without the emblem. But as you can see, it just protrudes out like so. So, yeah, that's enough for that for now. And without or just pressing the trigger here when it's inserted, it would just do the sound of you slotting it in. And if you pull it out without anything inserted, you just get the unsheathen sound without any announcement. So that's essentially it. So now let's actually, do the transformation process, to which we take our Wonder Ride book. Technically in the show, it does the announcement of the Wonder Ride book and then the description. However, because we already heard the description twice via pulling the tab out and doing this, I'm just going to do the short way, which technically it's opening the cover and then pressing the page, or pressing the button. So after doing that process, just simply slot in the Wonder Ride book in its designated slot. So obviously in this case, it goes to the right slot. So there you get the standby, and obviously to initiate the transformation, just grab onto the Seiken and pull. So there you get the transformation for Saber Brave Dragon, to which, just like Geo, the jingles are very simple, but then you get long descriptions of, or not long, you get like a brief description of like the Wonder Ride book and such. I apologize about that. So, basically, with the Wonder Ride book inserted, I don't know why this is a gimmick, but essentially, the one you can do like a wonder attack by just pushing back the cover of the Wonder Ride book against the driver. So that'll allow him to do a like fire punch or something like that. And honestly, I just don't like this gimmick. It just damages the Wonder Ride book. As you can see, there's already like a dent here just because of how hard you have to push it back in. It's just not really engineered very well, to be honest. I feel like it just wasn't a thing that was supposed to be a thing, but then like they decided to just throw it in there just so then these do something within the belt, but I'm not a big fan of it. As for the Seiken itself, once you insert it back in, if you press the trigger, you initiate the standby phase, to which if you press it again, you get the Dragon Hitsatsu Geki, which the Hitsatsu Geki is associated with the rider kicks because, they need that. However, you can initiate a second transformation, so obviously you just press it again. This time you pull out the sword. So in that case, you get the Hisatsugiri, which is the finisher slash. To which, you know, this is the typical, like, finishers we would have expected out of a series that's prioritizing swords. So yeah. However, there is one more thing we can do, which we'll need to remove the Wonder Ride book. And just like how we scanned the emblem to the Wonder mark, now we're gonna scan the Wonder Ride book itself to the Wonder mark. So same standby. So that's the first scan. Now we can scan this another time, or you have to scan it twice. So there's the second iteration. Now for the final iteration, which involves scanning this 3 times. Which will actually indicate that. So yeah, those are the, I don't remember what they're called exactly, but those are the sword finishers outside of the, SworDriver. And yeah, that's essentially it with, the set. There's actually not really much more I can really, you know, get into. Just besides like noting specific things like how it doesn't really matter what slot you insert the book in, because if I were to insert this in the second slot, it's just going to do the transformation. Again, no matter what, because it doesn't matter overall. It really only matters because of the picture. But anyways, my thoughts overall with the SworDriver, it's interesting, definitely. Like, that's the thing I always give them, is that I actually really like with the Rayla, Bandai is actually starting to be creative with, like, you know, like, our main, like, drivers and such, because, like, 01 obviously had, like, a bunch of, like, scanning and such, but, like, obviously, like, the way, like, 01's scanning method, it was through, like, magnets and such, but then Saber is, like, more typical with, like, NFC and such. So I really like how they're approaching the scanning or scannability aspect of the toys, just making them more unique. But obviously the big thing with Saber is just that it's actually prioritizing the swords as its transformation devices. Obviously it still has to incorporate the belt thing, which is why this is kind of all funky in general. Like, I'm still not really in love with the design of the SworDriver. Excuse me. It's growing on me in a bit, but, like, I don't know. I'm still particularly not really a big fan of it. I understand this is supposed to be like a bookshelf kind of thing, because obviously you're stacking the books on it. But I really feel like the thing that just makes this stand out, obviously, is just the Seiken itself. Like, it's just really neat that they actually did just throw, they just threw the main roleplay weapon and the main driver into one toy, because that makes a lot of sense. And for what the Seiken does, it's pretty neat, I'll say. Just little nitpicks I have is just like, I think the the sensor is a bit too sensitive. Essentially, when, like, you know, you're trying to, like, insert the sword back in, but if you're too slow, the tip is going to read the book. Obviously, it's going to cancel it when this button gets pressed in. But, like, I don't know, it's just still kind of annoying. If you want, like, a seamless, insertion of the Seiken without having to hear the scanning sound and such. And the Wonder Ride books, while it's nice, I guess they have their own sounds, I'm personally just kind of over it. Like, we had Ride Watches and ProRise keys for like 2 years straight, and I really wanted to break away from just a gimmick that didn't really do much. And technically, that's what these do, but I would have just... I understand as to why they just decided to give them their own sounds, or like their the way of justifying it, because it's just like, yes, these make their own sounds, but if you want the rest of them, or if you want the majority of the sounds, then you have to get this thing, because obviously this thing doesn't have the transformations, it just has the activation sounds, which honestly aren't really that, like, they are significant, but like, I don't know. I personally just would have preferred if like the majority of the sounds are built into here. Like, especially the insertion sound. This sound did not need to be built into this. Just because then it causes like, because sometimes the issue is that the sensor for the SworDriver doesn't pick it up right away. So like, you insert the Wonder Ride book, then it will just, you will have dead silence, then the standby will start. And speaking of inserting Wonder Ride books, yeah, this method of insertion is just kind of a mess. Let me just turn it off so then it doesn't make sound. So the first slot here is like the toughest, and then the middle slot here is like, you know, what you're going to get like at best like average, and then the third slot is just horrible. And that's because of the design they went with the SworDriver, because they wanted to go with the slanted, like this slanted design. It just kind of doesn't really work, because then as we will get to later, the Wonder Ride books are at different elevations of when you're inserting them. So like, so it just, you know, they're even, but they're slanted in a way. So like, some books, especially the books here, are a lot more difficult to slot in. And also because, like, I don't know what happened with my side. I think I might have broken, like, I jammed, like, either, like, I don't know, I did something to this side to actually make it so then it doesn't actually connect that well, because if I shake the SworDriver, you can tell it's not, like, actively, like, slotted in well. As you can hear from here, I don't have any of those issues at all. Even like here. Like, I don't have any of those like secure issues with these two slots. But then like, this slot here, I don't know what I did to like essentially bust it. Cause now like inserting ride books here is just like, it shouldn't be that easy. It should be as tough as inserting it here. But now I lost all of that, like, securance, and it's just like, you know, it just plops in, and I'm not really a big fan of that. So I'm just not really a big fan of how this was done as a whole. But anyways, yeah, like, overall, it's an innovative toy for sure, and we will get to that later on with the later toys and such. But for this by itself, it's alright at best. Especially because, as of like, you know, in December, right by the end of the year, all of the Sabers, like, the majority of, like, the beginning stuff for Saber actually started getting cut down in price already, which is just insane. Because obviously this thing would typically be, like, $45 to $50, but then this thing, like, dropped to, like, $35 to $40. So you can pick this thing up at best for, like, $45 new, and I'll just say that's worth it. Honestly. just go for it. But I can understand people being on the fence about this and such, just because it's not like as like I guess like you know it's just not as enjoyable, I guess, just because you're stuck with a dinky sword. But honestly, I like the full look of the SworDriver overall. I just think the sword like just popping out of the handle or popping out of the driver. I don't know. That's just interesting to me. Anyways, I talked for too long. This is probably one of the longest videos I've done just for a main driver. This is PowerRider, and I'll leave you people. Bye.